We have inherited Abe's legacy, especially abduction issues and the constitutional amendment, which he put so much of his effort into. I will work on challenges that Abe could not solve on his own.
Now let's discuss this story further with Seijiro Takeshita. He's a professor at the School of Management and Information at the University of Shizuoka and joins us now live from southern Japan. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us here on TRT World.
Thank you.
The Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is promising to continue Shinzo Abe's legacy, and that includes reforms to the constitution, which has not seen any changes for almost 70 years. Tell us, run us through what he hopes to achieve.
Well, actually, first of all, he has, I should say LDP has, the coalition government has safely achieved 2/3 of the vote, which means that the change in constitution is possible, and they will go ahead with that. Touching on various issues, for example, including a 9th Amendment, which is abolition of, the war effort itself, is a touchy subject, but they will start with, changes and definition, recognition of our self-defense force, which is virtually, according to many people, an Army and Navy, and to increase the amount of spending of that from 1% of GDP to 2% of GDP. And this is on back of obvious, aggression that we're facing from China. And we also are very aware of what's going on in Europe with the Russian invasion in Ukraine, and thus, as you reported earlier, worldwide inflation that is also going to swirl into Japan.
Now, Professor, as I understand, constitutional changes have been promoted by politicians in Japan for nearly 20 years, but it requires a 2/3 majority in both houses, right? So
Yeah.
How likely is it to succeed?
Well, it will succeed because, well, they've got 3 years to conduct this. Now, this is what some people call a golden era for the politicians, because for 3 years, you're not going to see any elections. So, you can touch on the virtually the third arrow of Mr. Abe's Abenomics, which is structural transition. And, that obviously takes a long time. The trajectory of the arrow is much, much longer, but you can work on it if you have 3 years. So my answer would be, if they don't do it now, when are they going to do it? Now, the problem here is that because of very unfortunate death of Mr. Abe, there could be, in my opinion, split that could occur in LDP, because he was the head of conservative LDP members, and Mr. Kishida is a leader of liberal LDP members, and they both work together. Therefore, things are going quite nicely. But now, without Mr. Abe, there could be some division that could emerge on this golden age of what they call, the possible, conduct of, policies. So this is a bit of a worry that's there. But, as, Mr. Kishida was saying in his speech, this is the timing to do it.
Okay, now, Professor, I also want to focus on the politics of the region. What do Japan's neighbors, in particular South Korea and China, think of a potentially new, more assertive Japan?
Well, Korea and China, unfortunately, have a very, sad past, and therefore there tend to be a very excessive tendency for these two countries to attack Japan, especially in regards to military. And also in Korea, it's very obvious that, attacking Japan relates to increasing their votes. So when it comes to, election season, Japan becomes very much of a target. Now, but aside from that, if you look at the coalition that we must form in order to fight off the aggression of the single, government, for example, like in China on Russia, Japan has to clarify its positioning and stance. And they did, I think, during, Mr. Abe's day. And therefore, we must jointly, fight against the aggression of China that we're seeing in these neighboring countries. And, I'm sure that, countries like Vietnam or Philippines, et cetera, would be very happy to join in the forces to fight off the aggression that we're facing right now.
All right, Professor Seijiro Takeshita, thank you very much for talking to us here on TRT World.